So, my name is Steunebrink. I'm working currently at the Swiss AI Lab ITSIA in southern Switzerland, and in the research group headed by Jürgen, Professor Schmidhuber. And also this is joint work with Kristinn and Thórisson, and I will tie into his previous two presentations here. Professor Schmidhuber and I are also co-founders of recent AI startup Nascence. You can find more details about that on nascence.com if you like. So I've been testing some of the arguments of this line of reasoning last month when I visited a workshop hosted by my friends at the Machine Intelligence Research Institute in Berkeley, California. And quickly they came up with an alternative title for my talk, namely Bas' super pessimistic method for learning ethical values. And I will explain to you why this, how they came to this conclusion. So, but before you zone off, let me just quickly give you the basic message, the take-home message here. The basic ideas: we're trying to make the discussion regarding recursive self-improvement more constructive. So, what is recursive self-improvement? It's the ability to leverage current know-how to make increasingly better self-modifications, continuing over the agent's entire lifetime. And so what is, in my point of view, currently not constructive about this, the discussions on this topic is that most people consider a question sort of like this: what is the behavior of an agent that is very intelligent and capable of self-modification? And they consider questions like, oh, will it try to trick people and giving it rewards even though it didn't actually do the work? Or will it hack its own utility function and then SQL do wireheading? And in my view, if you consider these questions, it's already way too late. Because how did you come up with this very intelligent agent in the first place? And if you consider really how you want to grow an agent from its baby beginnings, then you really have the opportunity anytime to make it gain a robust understanding and proper ethical values. So, and this is really what I want to focus on, is how do you walk this trajectory such that you do not suddenly end up with a very intelligent system which can ask you for rewards at gunpoint. So, what do I mean with robustness and values? I really mean with values like moral, ethical values. So, and this work is also sponsored by funded by the Future of Life Institute, which was brought into life by a cash injection from well-known AI, not how you say critic, someone like Elon Musk. How do you call a person like that? Someone who wants to make sure there is going to be safe AI. So what we want to build is also systems that not just have proper ethical values.
He's an advocate and benefactor.
Yes,
of safe AI.
that's it. Sorry, sometimes my non-native English fails me to come up with the right words. So with robustness, we want the system also to be robust, which means that it should recognize and resist interference, meaning either noise in its inputs or radiation in the environment, or malicious hackers, or even not so smart self-modifications. So these capabilities to develop a robust value system definitely require two things, namely building of understanding in the way that Professor Thórisson just explained, and additionally it should also be compelled to adhere to these values. Let me quickly illustrate both of these things. So understanding, or the Professor Thórisson just explained. So what if we train a system on 1 million images of tables and then present this image on the left-hand side of a table and ask it, is this a table? What answer do you expect it to give? It's of course a trick question. I don't want to hear yes or no from the system. I want to hear, well, if you would flip it upside down, it could fulfill the role of a table, because the common usage of a table is to keep things a certain distance off the ground, and in this position it will not be able to do that. This is what I mean with understanding what a table is. It is related to all the things that you can do with it in the world. Regarding being compelled to adhere to your values, you can, for example, consider a psychopath who perfectly knows that killing humans is bad, but he just doesn't care. So we want not just the system to understand that when you say don't harm humanity to your agent, you don't want to just understand. You want to, of course, first of all build an understanding of what do you mean with humanity. This is extremely vague. But then you also actually want it to adhere to this value. So the reason why some people thought this was, my approach here was very pessimistic is because I would prefer to say it's very realistic, because I have not much confidence in people coming up with the perfect utility function for their AIs from the get-go. Also, I do not see how we are ever hope to externalize the agents and its environment. So proving anything about the long-term behavior of the agent as a whole in its environment is probably not going to be feasible. And probably the agent won't even be able to do anything in a theoretically optimal way, because it just won't have enough resources, such as time, energy, and memory, these kind of things. So even with these very pessimistic or realistic basic assumptions, how can we still go towards building a system that develops a robust value system? So in the paper that you can find in the proceedings, I identified several key ingredients that would still be necessary to still be able to function in this way. So they are roughly in two categories. There are architectural necessary ingredients and methodological necessary ingredients. The architectural ones have to do with the implementation and design of the system, so knowledge representation, goals, constraints, and how it performs learning and control. And the methodological details is about how do you teach the system, how do you test it over time, and how do you measure its growth and how it stabilizes. So let me first go into the first point. So at a very high level, this is the basic minimum architecture of an AI that will be able to function in the setting as I said before. First of all, it has the requirements, the box with the requirements consists of goals and constraints. Goals, the human must be able to specify goals to the system, things to achieve, and constraints, which says states to avoid. Very important in my opinion, which is not acknowledged widely, is that knowledge must be decoupled from motivations of the system. And it must also have a simulation mechanism that can do forward-looking what-if scenarios before actually executing actions, before committing to anything. And in this setting, the controller of the system is the process that dynamically couples the goal-agnostic knowledge to the goals that are given at any time to the system to obtain actions. And these requirements must be updatable on the fly by humans. So it's still important to know what is in the knowledge representation. I specify knowledge as a large pool of granules. Each granule should at the very least have the capability of functioning as a forward or an inverse model in the control theory sense. So it should be able to make both predictions and participate in planning by being run forward or in inverse mode. These granules are added and removed. They are added to the system in a very tentative way, so with very low confidence, and then over time in an experience-based way, so the system will then monitor, once it adds a granule, monitor whether the predictions are correct over time, and only after that it's becoming confident, it will let this granule participate also in planning. And if it is not correct, then it just deletes it before it ever has affected the behavior of the system. So, all fine and well. I call this class of systems that adheres to these design principles, XPRI system for experience-based AI, because they are capable of very comprehensive self-modification, but they do not prove anything about the utilities of these self-modifications. They completely verify through experience. And although this class of systems is not hot air, at least one implementation of this class of systems exists. You can find more information and videos on this system. It's called ERA on humanops.org if you're interested, but I don't want to go into that here. So if you have a system that's implemented, you still don't have any mature AI, right? Because when you switch it on, it's super dumb, it doesn't know anything. So you need to train this system. Probably you will need to put it through lots of curriculum test cycles. And on the way you must rigorously test for its levels and its growth in understanding, probably using some task-based theory, as Professor Thórisson just explained to you in the last half hour. So how will this lead to any kind of values? First of all, values are anchored in the constraints that the humans can give to the system. So the states that the system should not violate. So these constraints are probably highly unspecified. For example, do not harm humanity. It's extremely vague. The system has no idea when you switch it on what even does humanity mean. So there's a large gap between the current knowledge of the system and the constraints that it should not violate. So the challenge is in building this bridge by building its knowledge. So that's what your test theory or your task theory should focus on, is building the understanding about this gap. And thanks to the simulation, yeah, this is the second last bullet point. Thanks to the simulation mechanism of, as we imposed here, it will not need to actually violate some constraints in order to figure out what would happen. So, but understanding, as I said before, is not enough. Agent must be compelled to adhere to them. Even though we said the controller is unmodifiable directly by the system, this doesn't mean that we are still safe. So if the controller only executes actions that the simulation mechanism said, okay, this is not going to lead to constraint violations, we are still not that safe, because very intelligent agent might still find some convoluted ways of either hacking itself or finding some other gaps into the constraints imposed by the human. So what we need to do is find a good set of values and stabilize this set of values, such that this stable set of values captures all the ways in which so that they are self-stabilizing. I will explain what this means. So, as I said, values must be robust against interference, must be compelled to adhere to it and protect it, where interference is either from other agents, environmental forces, or from itself. The argument for why XPRI systems can achieve this kind of stabilization is because of these key architectural ingredients, namely that it can do simulation before commitment. It cannot in any obvious way delete constraints. And the learning mechanisms were specified as working on the principle of effective utility and parsimony. And the knowledge representation is defeasible because it is experience-based. So the key here is that since it only acquires knowledge that is actually effective, it will over time increase further and further the logical consistency of its knowledge, because logically inconsistent course of actions are by necessity not effective. So an XPRI system will tend progressively towards logical consistency, and it is then in this interconnectedness and cross-reliance of the phenomena that the system learns to understand that an emergent kind of protection against corruption arises. Because any corruption, so for example, if even a human intentionally or unintentionally injects a new constraint that is logically inconsistent with what the system already knew, or what were already its values, then it cannot do anything with this constraint and will ignore it, because it's not logically consistent with what it already knew. So there will be an early sensitivity period in which you have the time and opportunity to stabilize the system, and over time it will become less and less open to new values, and it will start to protect its values. So, in conclusion, this whole approach places a lot of responsibility on the teachers of the system that apply the right curricula to the system, test its level of understanding in the right way. So the responsibility is shifted from the, as I said, the non-constructive way of viewing things was when the initial designer designed some initially-dated function and you press go and then it's fingers crossed. But here you have a much longer time, but still great responsibility on the teacher. And yeah, I will end here. Thank you.